Welcome to another session on our business plan development. Today we are looking at inflation stroke growth. In terms of growth or inflation, we're looking at when you're doing your financial projections, you need to look at the growth rate of the business or of the operations that you are setting up. So initially, the growth is driven by one, the strategies that you put in place to grow your business, like your marketing plan, your marketing strategies that you're going to implement it for you to acquire new customers. And as well as if you're a new business, as people know your business, the growth will be higher at the initial stage, which we have addressed under ramp up. But as you grow, then you're going to reach a certain point where you reach the peak of your business in terms of growth. Then from there on, the growth will be mainly on price, because we have what you call inflation. So your growth, the growth of your business will be driven mainly by inflation, unless you expand your operations, you open new locations. But as a business, you get to a point where initially you are growing because new customers are joining, your business is getting known, but you're going to reach a point where that growth is leveling off, is going to be guided by inflation. When you're doing your financial projections, you need to look at the strategies that you're going to put in place to grow your business. So you use that to say, if I put these strategies, how much will my business grow by year on year? So those strategies, maybe let's say they will initially help your business grow by 50%. So that's your growth rate. Let's say this year you grow by 50%, next year you grow by 50%. But in the third year, you can't continue growing by 50% because you're going to reach a point where you reach the peak in terms of the customers that you will be servicing. Then from then on, you're going to use what you call inflation. Now, the question is, what is inflation? Inflation is the general price increase in a country. So our South African Reserve Bank, they have inflation targeting. So for the longest time, as a country, we are targeting an inflation of 6%. So if anything happens for us not to be within that 6%, then the Reserve Bank, either they increase the interest rates or they decrease the interest rate for them to manage the spending in the country so that inflation is limited or it stays within the 6% range as targeted. So what does it mean to say our targeted inflation rate is 6%? So what it means is, averagely, yes, your sector might be different, so you need to understand your sector, but averagely, the target is the prices will increase by 6% year on year. So if your business has reached its peak, let's say your business, in terms of the strategies and all that, you have reached the customers that you can possibly service, and then you reach your maximum capacity as a business in terms of the operations, then the growth from there, it will be on the price increase. So it will be on that 6% that is targeted by our Reserve Bank. So what will happen is, when you do your projections, the initial growth rate might be higher, but it needs to be practical. As I said earlier, it must be linked to the strategies that you will be putting in place for you to grow your revenue. So the first year growth might be higher, the second year growth might be higher, third year, but you're going to get to a point where your growth, you are no longer growing the number of customers. You are only growing because of the price increase. So that price increase will be because of inflation. Naturally, the price goes higher unless you go into what they call deflation, where the prices are decreasing. But we're not going to discuss that because that's now a different economic environment altogether. So what you do is, when you do your projections, your growth for the first 2 or 3 years, it might be higher than the inflation because you'll be putting in effort and strategies and action in place to increase your revenue. But after that, then your growth will tend to stabilize around the inflation, which is the general price increase within the South African market. So the prices or your market is no longer increasing at the high rate that initially was increasing at. So you reach a peak, and at that peak, so from year on year, then you put your growth rate as 6%, or if it's not 6% and there's a change in the strategic direction of the country, then you look at what is the target inflation from the Reserve Bank, then you use that percentage as the growth. So the growth percentage is basically, if in the first year you're targeting to do 100 Rand, and then you're planning to grow your business by 20%, it means in the second year you're going to do 120. Then if you are planning to grow in the third year by 10%, then that means in the third year it will be 120 plus the 12%, the 12% growth on that 120. So you'll be doing about 136. So your revenue in year 3 will be 136. Why? Because of the growth that you are targeting. Growth can be one, based on the number of customers that you are servicing, and two, based on the price increase. So you look at what is expected in the country in terms of the price increase, then you adjust your prices year on year based on the inflation. And as a business as well, please make sure that you don't keep your prices at the same level throughout, and then you increase maybe after 5 years or so. You must continuously monitor the price increases within your sector. You need to know what are the average price increases in the sector that you're operating in, so that every year you adjust your prices using the price increase of your sector, and you take into consideration the price increases because of the inflation. But you don't add the price increases in your sector and the inflation, because normally the price increases in the sector, they take the inflation into account. So you need to understand the sector that you're operating in, know what is the price increases in that sector, so that when you're doing the budget and when you set your prices, set them using the price increases in your sector and taking into account the inflation in the country, because the inflation increases the prices of goods and services. So if you don't increase your prices, your cost will continue to increase while your prices that you are selling it are not increasing. So if the cost increases and you're not increasing your prices, then it will reduce the profit that you are making. You might end up making a loss because you are not increasing the price with inflation, while the cost that you are incurring to produce those goods and services are increasing. So you need to know the growth rate based on increasing the customers, which are driven by your marketing plans and your marketing strategies, and the increase in revenue based on the inflation, which is the natural price increase in a given country. Next is the video on our case study movies to explain the concept of growth and inflation in more detail. Enjoy.
Growth. Growth is that stage in your organization that you increase production and revenue after you have reached full capacity in the current setup. It is taking your organization to the next level. Growth happens when you invest capital and new resources to achieve the new level of growth. Growth is the increase of revenue above inflation. Inflation is the general price increase.
McDonald's growth is generally driven by new franchisees and upwards mobility of economic status of people, where people who previously couldn't afford fast food now can afford. The above creates new market for McDonald's, and to service the new market, they need to expand their operations by either increasing capacity of the current stores or opening new locations. When budgeting for your organizational growth, take into account that it costs money to grow. You need to invest in new capacity.
AUI's growth is driven by the increased spending by the U.S. Defense Force. Generally, the spending by the U.S. Defense Force is driven by increase in global tensions and wars. AUI's growth is dependent on the U.S. Defense Force because it may decide not to support certain wars. Keep in mind that real growth is growth above inflation, meaning this is not just price increases, but acquisition of new markets and customers. You need to know what drives real growth in your sector.
The A's growth is from winning games and championships. The more they win, the more they charge for their tickets and attract more sponsors. Growth costs money. The A's have to invest in good players to win, and it was difficult for them to compete for the best players with the bigger teams. They creatively found a cheaper way of acquiring good players by using statistics. Unfortunately, the players they have identified will get noticed. The bigger clubs will raid them. As stated above, growth costs money. As an entrepreneur, you have to find creative ways to grow without spending a lot of money and continue reinventing yourself. Complete the assignment. Compare how the topic is addressed in the three movies and rank them according to your preference on how the characters and the organizations dealt with the topic and motivate your ranking, 1 being the best and 3 the worst. Analyze this topic and its applicability to your situation and industry. Write up your analysis to meet the requirement of the industry you're operating in. Update the relevant section in your business plan.